Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, where I cover vampires, werewolves, and other supernatural creatures. In this video, we're going to take a look at Blade 2, one of my favorite movies by one of my favorite directors, Guillermo del Toro. This movie sees the introduction of the Reaper strain of vampires, a newer, deadly breed engineered by the vampire overlord. They were supposed to be the next step in vampire evolution, but that's not what happened. Let's get into Blade 2 and take a look at the Vampire Nation's grand plan, the Reapers, and more. If you enjoy videos about vampires, werewolves, and other supernatural creatures, leave a like and subscribe for new videos every week.
Look at what they've done to you.
The movie begins and we are reminded that Blade is a half vampire. All of their strengths, none of their weaknesses, except the thirst. Blade is searching for his mentor and father figure, Whistler. In the first film, we are led to believe that he died. Blade finds him wounded and Whistler tells him to give him the gun and walk away. As Blade is leaving, we hear a single gunshot, making us think that he is dead. The vampire tells Blade that Whistler shot himself, then turned. They just kept him alive. So Whistler did try to end his life, but he must have been too far turned already, so the gunshot healed itself. According to Blade, Whistler was being moved all over Europe, Moscow, Romania, but he finally finds him in Prague, the Czech Republic. I've seen this movie so many times, but never thought about the location. I always thought it was somewhere in America, but no, Blade 2 takes place in Prague. Anyway, Blade rescues Whistler from a vampire hideout. He's being kept in a large vat of blood. Blade's plan was to hunt down Whistler and kill him, but after seeing him, he changes his mind. Blade says this is a halfway house and they were keeping him in stasis. Whistler later tells Blade that they turned him into a vampire. He would be tortured until he was nearly dead. Then they would put him in a vat of blood to heal and repeat the process, torturing him over and over again. Whistler has no idea how long he's been gone, but he was missing for 2 years. So this film takes place 2 years after the original. Blade brings Whistler back to the safe house and cures his vampirism. He does this by giving him an accelerated retroviral detox. This must be like a better version of the cure that was developed in the first movie. This serum is able to cure Whistler in 1 night. By morning, he's back to his old self.
How do you feel?
Blade did say this though. In the morning, those blinds are going to open whether you're cured or not. It sounds like this cure wasn't a guarantee and there was a chance that it might not work. Blade introduces Whistler to his new sidekick, Scud, played by a young Norman Reedus, who played Daryl Dixon on The Walking Dead. Blade had to get someone to help him out since Whistler was gone. But of course, Whistler does not approve of the changes that Scud is making.
And I built this operation, you asswipe.
While Whistler is yelling at Scud, suddenly something trips the security system of the safe house. Scud can tell that they are vampires because their body temperature reads 50 degrees. The strange thing is, the vampires use magnesium flares to destroy the cameras, and they knew exactly where they were, which means someone must have tipped them off. Whistler grabs a gun and Scud tries to stop him, but that doesn't work out.
Whoa, I don't trust you.
The intruders are 2 vampires dressed up like ninjas. Blade tries to kill them, but suddenly the 2 vampires stop fighting. They explain they only defended themselves because Blade's men shot first. They're actually here on behalf of the ruling body of the Vampire Nation. They want to offer Blade a truce, because they need his help. The vampires bring Blade to their headquarters to fully explain what's going on. The vampire named Nisa says the true power of the Vampire Nation lies here. The building is completely surrounded by armed guards and high-level security. There's a biometric locking device to get inside and multiple heavy doors. There's definitely no getting in or out of here. Just in case the vampires try anything, Blade brought a bit of an insurance policy, enough Semtex to level a city block. Blade is introduced to the vampire overlord Eli Damaskinos. It's implied that the overlord is the leader of the entire vampire race, but it never explicitly says that. They actually thank Blade for killing Deacon Frost, the bad guy from the first movie who was trying to change the old ways. We don't know how old Eli is. In the commentary track, it's speculated by Wesley Snipes and David S. Goyer he could be several centuries old, possibly millennia. In the original cut of the movie, Eli had long white hair, but Guillermo del Toro didn't like how it looked, so it was removed. Eli says vampirism is a virus that's carried in the saliva of predators. In 72 hours, it spreads through the human bloodstream. creating new parasitic organs. Most vampires from other series do not age. However, this isn't the case with Blade. Blade is a half vampire, so he ages slower than a human. Pureblood vampires like Eli age much slower, able to live for several centuries, possibly thousands of years. A pureblood is someone who is born a vampire. Eli seems to have lost a lot of his super strength and physical abilities with age. He is still shown having some strength, but doesn't do anything that would require supernatural strength. He looks much different than a normal vampire, having discolored skin and slightly pointed ears. This could be caused by his age, or he might have always looked this way. It's unknown if humans that are turned into vampires age the same as a pureblood. It's possible they might age slightly faster or slower. Some people have also speculated that turned vampires are actually truly immortal. Eli is the second oldest vampire in the entire series. The only vampire we ever meet that's older than him is Drake. I noticed on this watch through that we never see Eli feed on someone or drink blood. We do see him bathe in blood, and he eats some kind of blood jello. This must be considered a fancy meal for vampires. Eli lives inside the Vampire Nation headquarters. This building looks like it hasn't changed in hundreds of years. The outside appears high-tech, but the inside is like an old castle. It has many old artifacts, paintings, and carvings. Some of the designs look like they're from Greece. Maybe this is a hint to where Eli is from. We see the Damaskinos family crest on the rings that he gave to his children and on the neck pieces of the armor. The first movie featured the House of Erebus. Each house has their own crest, like a coat of arms, usually dating back thousands of years.
Vampirism is an arbovirus.
They inform Blade that there is a new dangerous strain of vampires on the loose. They call it the Reaper strain. The carrier of this strain is a man named Jared Nomak, Patient Zero. They need Blade's help because the Reapers don't only feed on humans, but vampires as well. Not only that, but they're like drug addicts, feeding daily. I guess this implies that normal vampires can go much longer than a day without feeding. The other problem with Reapers is that their victims don't die. They become Reapers themselves. They speculate that there's already a dozen Reapers, hundreds by the end of the week, then thousands. What Eli fails to tell Blade is that the Reaper strain is not some product of natural selection. They created it. Eli is on a mission to remove all weaknesses from the vampire race. He is trying to achieve this by using DNA sequencing on his own pureblood DNA. Since Eli used his own DNA, it would explain why the Reapers seem to look like him. The vampire Nisa is his daughter, and the first Reaper, Jared Nomak, is actually his son. Presumably, he was an ordinary pureblood vampire and was then infected with the Reaper strain. The Reaper strain causes a constant pain that can only be stopped by feeding. Nomak is the original Reaper and carrier of the strain, so he is affected differently. He seems to be stronger and suffers less of the hunger that plagues the other Reapers. Other Reapers become so hungry, they begin feeding on themselves. Another big difference between Nomak and the other Reapers is that he can talk. Every other person infected with the Reaper strain becomes so feral they resemble a wild animal, unable to even speak. Some people have theorized that maybe Eli tried to experiment on himself, and that's why he looks the way he does. Nomak's current goal is to kill his father and as many vampires as he can. Since being experimented on, he now hates vampires. We see him go into this blood bank ran by vampires. A guy in the lobby says he loves coming here because they pay cash. And there's no limit to how many times you can give. They even accept it in the jar. Nomak pretends to be human to get inside. Once he's in, they tell him that his blood has a very rare phenotype, one they haven't seen before. They bring him into a private room and basically say they're gonna kill him. He pretends to be afraid, but slowly starts laughing. This unnerves the vampires and Nomak suddenly attacks. He kills all three of the vampires easily. Before killing the last vampire, he looks into the security camera and says, "Vampires. I hate vampires." Eli wants Blade to lead a highly trained team called the Blood Pack to hunt down Nomak and kill him. Blade agrees to the plan, but knows that he'll need to watch his back.
Sounds like a plan.
What do you really think?
They're gonna f us the first chance they get.
The Blood Pack was originally created to hunt down Blade, and now he's the one leading them. This causes the team to have a bit of animosity toward Blade, to say the least. The members of the Blood Pack are Lighthammer, Verlaine, Priest, Snowman, Chupa, and Reinhardt. I said this in my other video, but Priest is played by Tony Curran, who also plays Marcus in the Underworld series. Ron Perlman seems to appear in a lot of Guillermo del Toro movies, but he's great, so no complaints there. Snowman is played by Donnie Yen, aka one of the best action stars slash martial artists from Hong Kong. And I will always know Chupa as Vince from Fast and Furious. Blade asserts his dominance by sticking an explosive device to the back of Reinhardt's head and tells him if he does anything, boom. Blade wants to target all the night places where vampires congregate. Since Reapers are attacking vampires, that's where they're most likely to find them. Nisa suggests the vampire nightclub known as the House of Pain. Nightclubs are a common thing in the vampire world. In the first movie, we see the infamous Club Blood ran by Deacon Frost, where blood comes out of the sprinklers. The House of Pain is on a whole other level. They arrive outside the club and Blade says, "Where's the entrance? I don't see any vampire glyphs." In the first movie, we're told that that's the easiest way to find a vampire hideout. Look for a vampire glyph. Nisa says that they've had to upgrade their security and become more secretive. The glyph is still there, but it's written in some kind of invisible ink that you can only see with the right technology. At first I thought, well, maybe vampires can see this with their naked eye, but Blade is a half vampire, so he should have been able to see it. Before they enter the club, Whistler gives them all some weapons that he made. One of them is a stake gun that fires a stake at 6,000 feet per second, which is definitely impossible. That's roughly a 1 to 2 pound silver stake traveling at nearly 6 times the speed of sound. For reference, a pistol usually fires at around 11 to 1200 feet per second. This thing could probably shoot through a bank vault. They entered the House of Pain and we see all kinds of debauchery. The name House of Pain is very fitting. We see people being fed on, 2 vampires making out with razor blades in their mouth, tattoos, piercings, and another one I don't even think I can show. There's a guy performing a crazy body modification. He's cutting this woman's back open and you can see her spine. You'd think that'd be painful, but she doesn't seem to care. Since vampires have an amazing healing ability, this probably doesn't cause any lasting damage. The member of the blood pack named Priest says that half of these vampires aren't even purebloods. Why don't they just kill everyone to make sure? The vampire he's with doesn't seem to agree, but just like the first movie, a lot of pureblood vampires think that they are much better than a turned vampire. The camera pans down below the club and we see that the Reapers are here. And Nomak can smell the Daywalker. This means that Reapers might have better senses compared to a normal vampire. It seems that Nomak has at least some control over the other Reapers, as he's able to organize them for this attack on the club. Eventually, while looking around the building, Blade finds Nomak in the Reapers' attack. Nomak asks what side Blade is on. After all, they have the same enemy, the vampires. Blade shoots down this idea literally because although they do have a common enemy, the Reaper strain is too dangerous. The Blood Pack fights the Reapers while Blade fights Nomak. Also, Scud was monitoring them from outside and his van is attacked too. During the fight, they discover silver and garlic doesn't work on Reapers. Chupa fires hundreds of rounds into a Reaper and it does nothing. Snowman even sort of cuts one partially in half and it just crawls away. Lighthammer is attacked and knocks out a Reaper with his hammer. He bends over to inspect it, but it wakes back up and bites him. He manages to pull out his pistol and shoot the Reaper just as Verlaine enters the room, causing it to flee. Lighthammer covers his neck and says that it didn't bite him. Well, I guess we'll see how long it takes him to turn. Priest is thrown over a dozen feet and is ultimately overpowered by a Reaper and infected with the virus. For some reason, Lighthammer doesn't begin to turn right away, but Priest begins to turn within 20 minutes of being bitten. I think it's probably because Priest was fed on longer, meaning he got a bigger amount of the virus, causing him to change faster. Blade has an all-out fight with Nomak, but either one is able to get the upper hand. Blade even tries to use EDTA on him. Normally this makes vampires blow up like a balloon and explode. Blade even used it to defeat the blood god Lamagra. However, when he tries it on Nomak, it only causes him mild discomfort for a few seconds. Then he starts laughing maniacally. So Reapers are immune to that too. Eventually the sun comes up and Blade uses it to burn Nomak and this causes him to flee. They learn that one of the only effective ways to kill the Reapers is sunlight. Garlic and silver don't work at all, but they are extra sensitive to sunlight. It causes them to explode almost instantly. Once the sun rises, all the Reapers flee and they put Priest out of his misery. Again, they have to use sunlight because even after shooting him several times and cutting half of his head off, he won't die. Whistler finds one of the Reapers who was trying to flee but got stuck. Whistler said he found it chewing on its own arm, like a coyote. It was trying to retreat into the sewer below the club. This is how they find out that that's where the Reapers are living, and how they're able to move around undetected. Nisa wants to take this Reaper back to the lab to examine it. This Reaper is actually one of the vampires from the blood bank that Nomak went to in the beginning of the movie. This Reaper is dying because its metabolism is burning too fast. They need fresh blood every few hours or they'll start to feed on themselves. Blade states that Nomak is different though, because he is the carrier. He doesn't have to feed as often and doesn't become as feral.
It's already dying. I need to examine it as quickly as possible.
They bring the Reaper back to the safe house to examine it. The mouth of the Reaper is their most terrifying feature. The bottom jaw splits in the middle to reveal their tongue that's shaped like a flower. That's what they use for feeding and injecting the Reaper virus. It also has special overdeveloped muscles in the mouth that allow for a much stronger bite. When changing into a Reaper, they lose their lower jawbone altogether. Blade finds one sitting on the ground, so I guess they just fall out during the change. Something else unique to the Reapers is they have these extra fangs that can inject a neurotoxin. This paralyzes their victim while they feed. Next, they open up the Reaper's body to take a look inside. The entire anatomy looks different. Most importantly, their heart is encased in bone, making them nearly impossible to stake. The only way to do it is through the side. They drop some blood on the body and it starts moving like it's alive. Blade says the brain's dead, but the body is still trying to feed. Eli did say that the vampire virus causes the body to grow parasitic organs. This is just that gone to an extreme. When the Reaper feeds on Lighthammer, we see these things pop out of its back and some of the venom leaks out. Maybe these are the sacs where it stores the neurotoxin. Ordinary vampires have red blood. We can see that multiple times through the movie. The Reapers, on the other hand, have this green colored blood instead. Their veins are much more visible through their skin, and they also have slightly pointed ears, just like Eli. The transformation into a Reaper is very painful. While Priest was turning, he was screaming in pain, barely able to speak. Chupa also commented that his skin was burning up. The body temperature must greatly increase while the transformation is happening. Scud makes a kind of UV flashbang grenade that's very deadly to vampires. He rigs up a bunch of them to a switch to create a giant UV super bomb. Their plan is to take this into the sewers where the Reapers live and set it off. Nisa also extracted pheromones from the Reaper and they can use that to attract the other Reapers. Blade thinks their best bet is to attack during the day because they will have an advantage. We get to see that Blade is still using his serum to keep the thirst at bay. When the sun rises, everyone suits up and heads into the sewer. Reinhardt and Chupa end up trying to kill Whistler, because if they lose a partner, aka Priest, then Blade loses a partner. That logic really doesn't make any sense, but okay. Luckily, Whistler activates the pheromones and Chupa is killed by the Reapers and Whistler gets away. While down there, Lighthammer is finally overcome by the Reaper strain, so it took him almost a full day to transform. He kills Snowman, then tries to kill his girlfriend Verlaine, but she opens the manhole cover, killing them both. We see this vampire is burned by sunlight even through his clothes. I guess that's how sunlight works in the Blade universe. The Reapers start to close in, so Reinhardt begins prepping the UV bomb. Down in the sewer, we see massive piles of bones and skulls. We don't ever see the Reapers feeding on humans, but like Blade said, they need to feed every few hours, so they were probably killing hundreds of people. Assad, who is a member of the Vampire Nation, is killed as well by a bunch of Reapers hiding in the water, kinda like those creatures from Harry Potter. Reinhardt tries to activate the bomb, but the lever gets stuck and he's forced to retreat. Blade goes back to activate the bomb and Reinhardt purposely doesn't tell him that it's stuck, hoping that he gets killed, but that's not what happens. Blade activates the bomb and saves Nisa by giving her some of his blood to feed on. This is when Nomak approaches Whistler. He says, "You will survive this," only to tell Blade about this ring and the truth. This is when he tells him that Eli was the one who created the Reapers and that he is Eli's son. Shortly after, the Vampire Nation arrives and they take Whistler and Blade captive for some reason. When he wakes up, Blade, Whistler, and Scud are at the Vampire Nation headquarters.
Where are we? Some kind of chamber, deep in their lair.
Whistler tells Blade that Eli was the one who made the Reapers, and he doesn't deny it. He says for years he's been trying to rid their kind of hereditary weaknesses, recombining DNA. We see all these vampire embryos. There's probably many different kinds of vampires here, maybe some even worse than the Reapers. Presumably this is how Nomak started life. However, Nomak does say you were always his favorite to Nisa, so maybe he was just a normal pureblood vampire and got turned into a Reaper. I'm not sure. Nisa reacts like she had no idea that Nomak was Eli's son, which means they didn't grow up together. This leads me to believe that he was created from one of these embryos. After Eli does the typical bad guy thing where he reveals his grand plan to his enemies for no reason, he leaves the room. Blade pulls out the remote and tries to activate the bomb on Reinhardt's head, but it doesn't work. This is when Scud reveals that he is actually a familiar, and he's been working with the vampires the entire time. The bomb was never meant to explode. It was meant to make Blade feel like he was in control. The vampire glyph was on the inside of Scud's lip, so Blade wouldn't notice. All familiars are marked with a glyph. Scud being a familiar explains why the vampires knew about Blade's security system. It also explains why he tried to stop Whistler from grabbing a gun. The best part is when Blade reveals that he was on to Scud the whole time, and the bomb isn't a dud.
I was just starting to like him.
After Scud gets blown to smithereens, Blade is taken away by the guards. Since Nomak was a failure, they want to try to harvest all of Blade's organs and blood. They think by doing this, they can somehow find out the key to Daywalkers. While this is happening, Eli's daughter finds out that he doesn't care about her at all. All he cares about is the survival of the species. She realizes that the sewer was a suicide mission, and he let her go anyway. Earlier in the film, he even tells his familiar that he's willing to let his daughter die to get what he wants. Nomak finally arrives at the Vampire Nation, ready to get his revenge. The security is no match for him. He is shot by dozens of men and it doesn't even slow him down. He tears through Eli's men like nothing. Whistler is somewhere in the building getting beat up by Reinhardt. He picks the lock on his handcuffs, knocks out Reinhardt, and gets away. He crawls under the floor to Blade's room and sets him free. But he's severely wounded and had a lot of his blood drained. Whistler brings him back to the main room from before where there was a large pool of blood. Just as he's trying to get to the pool, he is shot multiple times by Reinhardt and falls into the blood. Reinhardt thinks he's dead and is about to leave, but that's when Blade rises out of the blood like a superhero. Now that he's fully recharged, he makes short work of the security guards. Reinhardt tries to trick Blade and stab him with a cheap shot, but Blade catches the sword with his bare hands. I love that when he tries to take Blade by surprise, it's still not good enough. Blade overpowers Reinhardt and slices him in half. That's the last member of the Blood Pack dead. One thing that's a bit of a mystery is how did Nomak find the secret location of the Vampire Nation? Earlier in the movie, he was able to easily smell the Daywalker among hundreds of vampires. It's most likely he knew Blade's scent and followed him from the tunnels after talking to Whistler. Some people also think it could have been because Blade broke one of the vials of Reaper pheromone on himself in the tunnels. It seems more likely it was because he could follow the scent of the Daywalker though, since they pointed that out earlier. I actually found a snippet online of the original script by David S. Goyer, and it says, "He's been watching me, following me since the tunnels," talking about Nomak. So it's very possible that he just simply followed them back to the headquarters. Nomak has made his way through the entire building. It's a pretty close call for Eli, but he's still safe for now. Just before he's about to escape to his helicopter, his daughter Nisa locks the doors. Eli is confused and says, "Are you insane? He'll kill us both." Nisa just replies, "Isn't it sad that you die not by the hand of your enemy, but by that of your own children?" Just then, Nomak enters the room. I guess Nisa realized her father deserved to die. In a desperate attempt to live, Eli tries to appeal to Nomak, promising that he can rule by his father's side and to take his rightful place. Eli even promises that they will find a cure to the Reaper strain. But Nomak says, "If what you say is true, Why does your voice tremble so? Nomak could tell his father didn't actually care, and he was only saying this out of fear. Nomak kills his father by ripping a massive chunk out of his neck. He actually just bites him normally, so that he will die and not become a Reaper. Nomak says, "I've spared you my fate. You will die." For some reason, Eli's blood is black. He's the only vampire we've ever seen with black blood. When Eli finally bleeds out, he has a very unique death. Unlike every other vampire that turns into ash, he turns into a kind of stone. This must be something unique to vampires as old as Eli. Next, he bites his sister Nisa, but unlike his father, he infects her. That's when Blade enters the room and they begin their final fight. During this fight, we get to see more displays of how strong the Reapers are. He's able to jump dozens of feet into the air and punch through concrete. Blade breaks Nomak's arm pretty badly and it heals within a matter of seconds. In summary, the Reapers are much stronger than normal vampires, have better healing, possibly better senses, and are not weak to garlic or silver. They're also immune to EDTA. They can be staked, but they have a bone plate over their heart. The downsides are they have to feed very often, most go completely feral, and their sensitivity to sunlight is greatly increased. Blade is putting up a good fight, but it looks like Nomak is about to finish him off. That's when Blade sees his broken sword on the ground and he grabs it. He allows Nomak to pick him up, and just as he's about to bite him, Blade grabs him by the throat and stabs him through the side of the heart. Earlier, when they opened up the Reaper, they noticed that the side of the heart was the only vulnerable spot. Nomak stumbles backwards onto the ground. The sword is only just touching his heart, so he's not dead yet. Nomak says, "It hurts. It hurts no more." We're told the Reaper strain causes a constant pain that can only be dulled by feeding. But Nomak has finally found a permanent escape from the pain. He grabs the sword and shoves it the rest of the way into his heart. Nomak was a villain, but not by choice. His condition forced him to kill, and even then he focused most of his efforts on the ones who made him that way. The vampires. Although he killed humans, we never see him slaughtering innocent people. He's pretty nice to the guy in the blood bank, and when we do see him kill someone, it's a drug dealer. I think that's part of what made Nomak interesting. He was almost exclusively a threat to vampires. I think it's cool how similar he is to the original vampire, Drake. They both have a split jaw and a similar tongue, so does this Pomeranian. I said this in my video about Drake, but perhaps at one point all vampires had this kind of mouth. The first vampire had it, so it would make sense. I hope you enjoyed my video about Blade 2. Even though I think the first Blade is objectively the best movie, I find myself re-watching this one more. I really enjoy the chemistry with the blood pack, the jokes they crack, and the Reaper strain of vampires. I think the Reapers are one of the coolest vampire designs ever. It would explain why Guillermo del Toro reused the design for his show The Strain. Also, it would have been kind of cool if Whistler stayed a vampire for a while and had super strength and everything. Then he could have been like a full-blown member of the blood pack. One more thing. Luke Goss, who played Nomak, also played Prince Nuatu in the Hellboy series. I really wish he was in more stuff because he's great on screen. That movie is also directed by Guillermo del Toro. His Hellboy beats the new one any day. Let me know what you think of Blade 2. Is it your favorite Blade movie? I would have to say yes, even though I know the first one is the best overall. If there's any other movies, TV shows, or video games you want me to cover, let me know. I have a few in mind, but I'm always looking for new ideas. If you enjoyed, leave a like, and subscribe if you haven't. It helps out a lot and I really appreciate it. Before I go, a big thanks to all my members for supporting the channel. Roderick, Jason Miller, Sothras Paradox, Adam Mokabe, Gabriel Ragsdale, Matthew Batson, Dragon Faye Rose, Emily Nixon, Onyx Cat, Walter Collin, Dominic Toussaint, Czar Shadow, Steve Lloyd, Jake Walker, Awesome Pea Shooter, Cyper2890, Mark Thorpe, Steven556, Owen Wildish, and Joseph Roman. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.